desire to speak, but does anyone have any public comments not related to the items on the agenda tonight? Okay. With that, we'll move on to HR 1609-7.
Good evening, HRB members. My name is Carrie Richter. I'm the Deputy City Attorney, and I'm here to sort of help out tonight. We've got 2 public hearings on land use applications scheduled for tonight. A staff report has been prepared for each application and has been made available to the public 7 days before the first public hearing. The staff report identifies the approval criteria that apply to each applicant's proposal. Staff has analyzed the criteria which are contained in the staff report. The quasi-judicial hearing procedure that the Commission will follow is set out in state law and the Oregon City Municipal Code. The hearing procedure steps that we will follow are shown in the chart over there on the wall. Anyone wishing to speak should fill out a speaker's card and give it to the planning staff before the hearing. You should fill out your address on the card so the city will notify you of its final decision. For the public record, please begin all testimony stating your name. Testimony and evidence should be directed toward the applicable approval criteria. If you believe other criteria apply in addition to those addressed in the staff report, identify and discuss those criteria and explain how and why you believe they apply to the application under consideration. A person may submit any written material while the public record is open on each application. Any written materials received by city staff during the time period in which the record is open will be placed in the record. Written materials submitted during the public hearing must be presented to city staff in order to become part of the record. If a person intends for PowerPoint presentations, oversized poster boards, reports, pictures, or other exhibits used in their oral testimony to be placed in the record, copies must be submitted to city staff while the record is open. If they are not given to staff, they will not be included in the record. Any person wishing a continuance to present additional evidence or testimony or to keep the record open to respond to new evidence must make that request before the public testimony portion of this hearing is closed. If the Historic Review Board makes a decision to which you disagree, any issue that you may wish to appeal must have been raised for the consideration of the City Commission or the HRB or both as provided in City Code. Without raising the issue on the record with sufficient specificity and accompanied by statements or evidence that the city and all parties can respond, the issue will not be deemed appealable to the State Land Use Board of Appeals. In addition, the failure of an applicant to raise constitutional or other issues relating to proposed conditions of approval with sufficient specificity to allow the local government or its designee to respond to the issue precludes an action for damages in circuit court. Now we will open the record for Oregon City file number PC 17-019 HR 16-09. At this point, I'm going to ask if any commissioner has had any ex parte contacts, conflicts of interest, bias, or any other statements to declare.
And just one more addition, it's also HR 1610, HR 1611, HR 1612, HR 1613, and HR 1614.
Thank you.
And 15?
Any ex?
And 15. Sorry about that.
And 15.
So many.
And 15.
Why not?
Back to the ex parte contacts.
No.
Nope.
No. Nope.
Has anyone visited the site?
Yes.
Yes.
Does anyone wish to question the commissioners about these disclosures? Board members, I should say. At this point, if it's okay with you, we'll commence with the staff report.
Yes.
Good evening. My name is Trevor Martin, planner with the Oregon City Planning Division. The applicant is requesting design approval for the construction of 7 new cottage-style dwelling units with preservation incentives adjustments to the front side and rear yard setbacks in the Kenema Historic District. And I'll... Okay, there they go. So in approaching this application, this is something that has not been really proposed before in Kenema or really Oregon City. So in approaching this, city staff kind of looked at these questions, and I'll read the executive summary. The proposed development is requesting approval for the construction of 7 cottage-style homes on 4 lots of record in the Kenema Historic District. The Oregon City Municipal Code allows for the construction of up to 8 cottage homes on R6 single-family dwelling zone lands. However, there is no precedent for cottage homes in this historic district. Although the proposed building footprints mirror historic vernacular structures, adjacent areas maintain a lower density. Further, the applicant has requested a preservation incentive to allow the siting of 7 cottage home structures within the otherwise applicable setbacks, and in some cases on the property lines. Throughout the staff report, city staff was looking to the applicant to answer 5 primary questions. And those questions are: is the siting of the proposed cottage home contextually appropriate in the Kenema Historic District? Is the proposed density of the site contextually appropriate for the Kenema Historic District? Has the applicant provided the necessary findings to approve the requested preservation incentives? Is there appropriate mitigation, such as landscaping and spacing between the proposed homes on the subject site, to reduce the impact of the proposed development on the surrounding neighbors and the historic? Are the designs of the submitted homes contextually appropriate to the Kenema Historic District? And if the designs are different, does the quality of those designs meet or exceed the standards of the design guidelines? And staff believes that the applicant has not fully answered the primary question as recommended conditions of approval in order to satisfy the approval criteria. The conditions may result in a reduction of cottage homes on site, and further analysis can be found throughout the staff report. But I'll get into that now. So here is a site plan of the proposed cottage homes in Kenema, in the Kenema Historic District. And when referencing here, let's see if there's a laser. So they kind of numbered when I was writing them in the staff report and going through them: home 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7. Initially, home number 1, number 4, number 6, and number 7 are requesting preservation incentives to be along the side yard property line, the rear and side for number 4, the side or the front yard for number 6, and the front and the side yard for number 7. You can kind of make out here the property line goes along here from Miller Street and along here on 4th Ave. And so when looking at the site, I should have had these flipped around, I apologize. Right to the northwest of the site right here is the Cassidy House, which these proposed cottage homes would be abutting against. And the Cassidy home is an individually listed property within the Kenema Historic District. And the proposed homes would be requesting for preservation incentives to be abutting up against that home on primarily house number 1 and house number 4. These are elevation drawings that the applicant has provided to us, and as you can kind of see here, so along 4th Avenue, the house 1 and 2 would have access to 4th Avenue, and you can kind of see how it would be located next to the Cassidy home, and then along 4th Avenue, and then along Miller Street, you would be able to see 4, 5, 6, and 7 from Miller Street, with again the Cassidy house kind of at the corner there. When going through this and looking at these elevation drawings, these renderings, staff tried to get an idea of some of the landscaping that the applicant has been proposing to attempt to mitigate for some of these. We also looked at what the what kind of visibility of the surrounding, the visibility the proposed homes will have on the other homes within the Kenema neighborhood. And we kind of asked the question, as I stated earlier, does the density and does the siting of these homes along Miller Street and 4th Avenue, does it create a space that is kind of out of context for the Kenema neighborhood? Will there be too much? Will there be too many buildings exposed on the street? Will the density just kind of look out of place? And then this is Miller Street going up towards 5th Avenue, and you can kind of make it out here. It's kind of, you know, a single family home located with not much around it. It's kind of how it's presented itself right now. One single family home on approximately 10,000 square feet of land. And then moving to the site here, so this would be the property line that would be one of the areas requested for preservation incentives. And let's see if I have a better angle. It's kind of dark, and I'm sorry about that. That property line extends through here, and this is approximately the edge of the right-of-way right here. So the homes that have been proposed would be approximately along the edge of right-of-way here and the edge of right-of-way here, with the proposed parking lot coming out into the road in approximately this area. Now going down 4th Avenue, again, the corner with the Cassidy House. You can see that the Cassidy House is elevated a bit when going down the street. It's above street grade, several feet. And as you head down the street, this is where approximately where the proposed entrance for the cottage homes has been proposed. And looking at it, there's several feet of grade to get to the site. Right here, I would say maybe about 5 feet or so. And that the Cassidy home is elevated, and the home right here is also elevated. And I have some pictures here. Is also elevated. So one of the additional proposals is to access this site. The applicant has also made the proposal to remove some of the fill to lower the grade, which would then bring the grade of the site different to that of the Cassidy home and the home neighboring next door. Again, breaking up that context of the Kenema neighborhood, adding maybe some disruption in the layout headed down the street. Now, it's not the question of whether or not the geotech and the technical, if that's at all possible. We will be looking at that at a separate time. It's more or less looking at that context question of would a retaining wall in this space make more sense than the land itself? Would that design, that contextual breakup in the neighborhood, would that be consistent with things seen in Kenema, or would that be somewhat different? And that's kind of the question that we looked at when going through when going through the application. And again, so that the house next door gets to the home via a driveway that goes uphill. Again, I don't know, maybe about 5 to 6 feet of grade right here. And again, looking at the Cassidy home, you can see it as elevated, and this area would be removed so that there would be a home along this property line with a retaining wall out. And here that first home is. So going back and looking at each individual home. So house number 1 and house number 2, be looking at here. So the dotted line here would be approximately the grade removed and a retaining wall replaced in that area. And this is the rendering of what that would look like. So there would be, as you head down 4th Avenue, there would be that breakup of elevation as driving down the street. Is that contextually appropriate for the Kenema neighborhood? House number 1, and I'm not going to go through the design, the design criteria on each home. More or less looking at they have been designed in the vernacular style. They all average out to the cottage housing average square footage that's specified by the Oregon City Municipal Code. Okay, sorry. So going here, and another picture up here, you can kind of see where that elevation would be. This, I believe, would be looking at the home from the side of the Cassidy house, so you would see, the side of the building up against their property line. Let's see here, floor plan. House number 2, this would be right behind house number 1, going in from 4th Avenue. There's just a couple questions that I wanted to point out on this home that actually does have to do with the design of the home. The first one being the roof cutout on the bottom right-hand corner here. There were just some questions on whether or not that was an appropriate style for the neighborhood, which I addressed in the staff report. As we're moving on. So then house number 3, again, it's kind of the same idea here with the roof cutout. Is that appropriate for the Kenema neighborhood? House number 4, the big question here would be the glass windows and the glass wall, more or less, on this first floor. In the upper right-hand corner, would an architectural feature like that be appropriate in Kenema? House number 5, and again, well, this one would be the corner porch and the glass doors wrapping around. That was the big question on that one. And this one I didn't have too much on. That would be house number 6 and house number 7, which would be addressing the glass wall, and would that be appropriate for the neighborhood? Those are my main questions in looking at the design of the homes. There were some other small things, but I don't want to spend, I guess, too much time on those for sake of public comment and everybody getting a chance to talk. And if there are, well, I'll get to that at the end of the presentation. So, in the end, after going through the criteria, after looking at the Oregon City Municipal Code, staff feels like it is possible to approve the proposal with conditions, and I did not list the conditions up there because there are a lot of them. Because I break it out for each home, and then I break it out for the site. But the big condition that I would be looking at that I think could be answered better would be that the applicant should reconfigure the site to accommodate all buildings and parking and the parking lot on site in accordance with the Oregon City Municipal Code. And this applicable section includes, but are not limited to, the dimensional standards of the R6 single-family dwelling district, the cottage home standards, which include and the home standards, and which overall this may result in a reduction of the number of units on site. So that was the main idea that I was looking at. Oh, yes. Yes, yeah. Yes, I can do that quickly. So if we go. Yeah. Sorry, I'll go back here quickly. to the site plan. So with removing those preservation incentives, so in the R6 zoning district, and I think I brought the code with me, what that would mean is that the front yard setbacks for this lot, or for this home and this home, so the front yard setbacks would be 20 feet. The rear yard setbacks would be 15 feet. And for the side yard setbacks, one would be 5, and I believe one would be 7. So that would mean these homes would have to bump over a little bit and get off of the property lines.
There's a 6 foot between, right?
A 10 foot between the homes, the cottage homes, yes.
So just to summarize the setbacks, for our 6 zoning designation, the front yard is 10 feet, front porch is 5 feet, garages are 20 feet, interior side yards are 9 and 5, corners are 15, rear are 20 foot, and the rear porch is 15.
Okay, so I was a bit off, I'm sorry.
And where would the parking have to go?
So the condition would be that all of the development is restricted to on-site,
So
including parking.
Yeah, so within the property line, so this would be scooched over a bit here.
And just to specify for the reference for the 10-foot separation, there's a separate process called site plan design review that would be required, just like a geologic hazards review would be required. And within our site plan design review standards, which we're not reviewing today, there is a 10-foot separation requirement
Between.
between homes.
Between
Structures.
the homes.
Mm-hmm.
It's for the fire code and stuff too, probably. Yeah.
So yeah, that was what I was going to get at as well. Do you have any questions for me? I know there's a lot here.
Yep. Can you clarify on the items that the staff has requested additional information, what the process is for additional conditions that would be imposed on those items once you receive that information, or what the process is after
So I believe the process would be revising the staff report with revised findings. So you could make the findings and direct me to either revise the staff report.
So it sounds like the question was, how do you know the conditions of approval will be met?
No, so on each house there's a number of items that say you didn't have enough information right now and that you require more information to complete your assessment on those homes. So my assumption is that once you receive that information, you would apply new conditions?
So we've provided conditions of approval that settle those outstanding
That-
questions.
Yeah, that attempt to settle them. There are questions. There are questions that I put forward for each individual home, and in the current conditions of approval, I try to address those questions. If there are some that are missing, you can make the findings and direct me to revise any finding that I have.
Or make a motion to add additional
Or-
conditions of
correct.
approval.
Has the applicant been notified that the parking off-site was in question in the site plan design review?
Yes, yeah, we did make that finding when going through the pre-application conference that the parking off-site could be, I guess, problematic.
Is there a variance that he could request that would allow that? I know that's outside of our jurisdiction, but I'm asking for informational purposes.
There is a process. The Public Works Department has indicated that they would not support that.
Okay, thank you. And parallel parking adjacent to the site, if it was on-street parking, would that count towards parking for this?
So the condition is that it takes care of all the parking on site, so you couldn't count adjacent on street. Similar to commercial, you can. The condition as it's written says everything, including parking, has to be accommodated on site.
Yeah, I saw that that's the way the condition was written, but I was wondering, in general, the code would generally allow parking fronting a site to count towards on-site.
Let me take a look in our cottage housing standards.
Okay,
1 second.
okay.
And what did it have to do also with the width of the street and, just the accessibility?
It is an
There's
issue.
sufficient width, it's
There
just the
is.
pavement
Yeah.
is narrow.
Okay.
I'll try
Um,
to pull it up in here quickly.
on
But certainly if the Historic Review Board didn't allow it, then in the site plan design review process, the subsequent process, it wouldn't be allowed.
right. For house number 1, item A, we're saying retaining walls and structures shall not be minimized to be faced or finished in stone, mortar, basalt, or concrete, and not exceed 3.5 feet. Where did the 3.5 feet come from?
That was lifted out of the design standards
Okay.
for new homes,
Well,
In Panema?
and I'm pulling it up right here.
Okay.
But I believe so. Yes.
I guess what I'm getting at is the next item on the agenda, we're going to be looking at something with concrete walls considerably higher.
Right. Yes. So again, there could be findings made that
Okay.
that challenge that. If you find it appropriate and that it meets your standards, if you find that the findings, or you can make an argument that it's appropriate,
Okay.
we can.
So staff felt on balance as a whole to break up, to mitigate for the proposed development, that massing that those walls should be smaller.
Okay. Okay. And okay. Item H on house 2, skylights shall be installed in inconspicuous roof slopes, and skylights shall be mounted close to the roof plane and not visible from the right of way. I was wondering if it was the staff's intention that the glass would not be visible, or the curb itself, or including the curb, would not be visible.
The glass.
The glass,
visual.
okay.
Yeah, that was the idea.
Okay. And being not visible from the right of way, was the intent that it would not be visible from the adjacent right of way? Or as we're looking at 4th Avenue and Miller Street, there's a lot of different angles to be
Right.
anticipated.
So that'd be house number 2. So that would be from the approach on 4th Avenue.
Okay. So it
as-
would be from the adjacent right of way,
Right,
is really
yeah.
what we're seeking. Okay. And house number 4, let's see. What was that? The main entrance shall not be, where did, no, that was, item A, the main entrance of the house shall not be oriented towards the adjacent parking area.
And I said that because in the design, I had a hard time. I don't know if I'll be able to find it here quickly. I had a hard time locating when in the design here the entrance of the home exactly.
Okay.
Let's see if I can find it here quickly.
I believe the entrance to the home actually faces the right of way, Miller Street, which is towards the parking lot. In most cases, we encourage the front door to face the right of way.
Yes, yeah. I think that was just the issue. Is I had a hard time actually locate. Yeah, here it is, locating the front entrance on the picture.
Okay.
So I that's why I put it like that.
So is the intent that it should not face, or that you actually thought it should?
That it should face the right of way.
That should. Okay.
Yeah.
And after house number 7, item number 4, I was wondering if that was a general requirement or if that was specific to house number 4.
Which one was that?
House 7, directly after item G, there's item 4. And I wasn't sure if that was a formatting issue and that was directed towards item 7, or that was a global item in which you want to see landscaping
For all of them.
for the entire site.
Oh, yeah. That may have been. That was a global that applied. So there's supposed to be a space in between there. Yeah, that's supposed to be number 4, separate from the homes. Yes.
Yeah, okay. Well, I'll say there was a lot of findings here, and there was a lot of reading and dissecting, because you basically had 7 houses to pull apart.
Yeah.
So you did a good job of organizing this.
Thanks.
I'll pass questions along to anyone else. Ken, did you have any?
I'm not clear on the retaining wall facing number 1. The retaining wall on the right-hand side of the driveway as you look at it from 4th Avenue. It appears to me that that significantly, in the drawings at least, significantly exceeds that 3.5-foot threshold. Am I reading that wrong?
It does seem like it would exceed that, yes. And the criteria was lifted. The findings that 3.5 foot was pulled out of the design guidelines for new construction within the historic districts. It does look like it will exceed that. Now, you can certainly change that. You can add findings that maybe there are walls that do exceed that. The idea of a retaining wall. It looked like you were going to say something.
The 3.5 feet is also identified in the site plan design review criteria for cottage homes, as well as our fence and retaining wall standards in our Oregon City Municipal Code.
Okay. Yeah, it's pretty universal.
Yeah. And then one more response, you had asked about the parking under
Yeah.
our site plan design review for cottage homes. It does not say that it has to be on site.
Okay. Okay. Thank you.
But you're listing that as a condition?
The
Or
condition,
you're recommending it as a condition?
Yeah, so the condition is looking on balance at the development proposal and at those 7 buildings and balancing those 7 buildings with having to stay within the confines of the property, including the setbacks of the zoning designation as mitigation for the site.
Yeah.
So in addition to landscaping as a condition of approval, as well as these retaining wall and things like that.
So the way, well, I won't. Oh, okay. Did you have any other questions, Claire?
I have a problem with all the glass walls.
We'll get into deliberation in a bit.
Okay, yeah.
Do we have any questions for staff?
No.
Okay. With that, we will invite the applicant up. Okay.
I would like to place this physical model somewhere up in this area where we can all see it.
Okay.
I'm thinking that right here maybe the
Could
best
that move?
place.
I don't think that moves. If you place it on top of the half wall, that might work. Yep.
Yeah.
Is that-
That's okay. Okay. Sorry. And time is of the essence here, so we're trying to make this. My name is Chris Staggs. I am the applicant, and there is far too much information to communicate to really. Someone in my office was saying, why can't we all just sit around a table and kind of talk about this and figure it all out and design this project together with the city over a couple-hour workshop? And I thought that would be wonderful. But we don't have that luxury. So I'm gonna try to squeeze this into 15 minutes, and I'm gonna focus on some key things. One is on the executive summary by staff. I'm going to focus on density in the Kenema context in relationship to the three code sections that we're working under here, R6, cottage, and historic for Kenema. I'm going to talk about the how I believe we've met this nexus for historic preservation incentives, and then I'm going to have a conclusion after all that. And yeah, so that's exactly what I was going to suggest. Yeah, thank you. So the first thing is that I'd like to do is, and maybe I'll just conclude during the conclusion. I'll talk about the model and show some physical representations of what I'm going to discuss. So the first thing is addressing the executive summary of staff, and the first thing I want to say is that I understand that this project has a lot of moving parts. We've got several standards that we're looking at. It's the first time we've done a cottage home development in Oregon City. There's a lot of things to consider. But what I would like to do is go through the executive summary, which are the questions that Trevor put up on the screen earlier, and talk about why I think we have answered all those questions in our application. The first one is the siting of the proposed cottage homes contextually appropriate in the Kenema district? And there are four things about Kenema that are special and interesting and different that we have designed our project to address. One is homes on the property line. There are several instances throughout Kenema which we went to great lengths in our application to illustrate that there are many, many homes in Kenema that are on the property line because of the unique nature of the neighborhood, because of the topography, because of the right-of-ways, because of the small streets. The property right next to us, the Cassidy House on the corner, in fact, their east-facing wing of the home is either right on the property line or very close to the property line. So there's a home right next to us where we have that is very close to the property line, or if not right on it. So property lines is one aspect of Kenema. The other is the topography and the siting of homes in Kenema. The siting of the homes are greatly influenced by the topography of Kenema. So in our design, we have, with the exception of the home right off of 4th Avenue, our homes are basically at grade in the topography. So the majority of our homes are fitting right in with the topography of Kenema. Thirdly, there's the wetland resource on the site. And there are, as everyone knows, Kenema has water running through it in multiple places in multiple ways. So the siting of homes is often relates to the water circulating through the neighborhood. And then lastly, in the siting of homes in Kenema, there is the home that we're proposing on Miller, the two homes, house number 6 and 7, right on Miller. Though we're proposing those to be right on the property line, they in fact are a greater distance away from the road than most homes in Kenema because of the nature of the road right there where Miller bends and goes up and turns into 5th. So even though we're proposing homes to be right on the property line there, we are in fact equal or further away than most homes from the road in the Kenema area. There are many instances in Kenema where homes and buildings are very close to the road with cars parked between the building and the road. The second question in the executive summary is the proposed density of the site contextually appropriate for the Kenema Historic District? So when we start talking about density, I want to try to boil it down into there's the three. There's R6 density, there's cottage home density, and then there's the Kenema density. In the staff report, it suggests that perhaps we should go back to our original scheme of 4 single-family homes on each parcel, which would allow us to build 4 over 2,000 square foot homes plus an ADU on each parcel. Okay, and that could not exceed 40% of this. Each house would not be able to exceed 40% lot coverage. So we could conceivably, in that suggestion, go back and have a much greater density on the property using the R6 zoning. But we know that we have other considerations here. We have the cottage standards as well, which I'm not going to elaborate on, but I'm going to elaborate on the Kenema density standards. So in the design guidelines for the Kenema Historic District, it states that in homes or properties south of 3rd Street, which we are, in other words, up the hill higher, there's a lower density up there, which we understand that and we agree with that. And that density should not exceed 30%. A proposed home on each parcel should not exceed 30% lot coverage. In other words, the footprint of that home should not exceed 30% of the site area. Our current proposal is 17% of the site area for each parcel. So we are almost half of the suggested design guidelines for Kenema south of 3rd Street in that density. So the notion of suggesting that our project is not in the context of the Kenema density, we definitely do not agree with that, and we would suggest that that is not a correct assessment of the proposal. And with that, the image on the screen shows. If you could we turn the lights down so you could kind of see that better? Thank you. So these three diagrams show the diagram on the right is our current proposed scheme, showing 7 cottage homes on the property with the parking pulled back away from the street on Avenue, with the parking being mostly off of Miller, with the exception of 2 parking spaces. We do have 1 parking space on 4th Avenue in the right-of-way as a part of that scheme, our current scheme. And that right-hand site plan diagram is equivalent of 17% coverage of the site area. The middle diagram shows 8 cottage homes on the same property. It assumes a right-of-way vacation between the 2 parcels, but it shows an 8 cottage home scheme. And then the diagram on the left shows 4 single-family homes on the property using the R6 zoning standards. And the other interesting thing to note is in the elevations down on the bottom of the page, the elevations on the right-hand side are what our proposal is today, with the existing Cassidy house on the right and the proposed cottage housing on the left. And then on the left-hand drawing shows the existing Cassidy house on the right, and then the allowable single-family home with a 35-foot height limit rather than a 25-foot height limit. So when you talk about when we talk about density, there's the footprint of the buildings on the site, which are those top diagrams, which is kind of an abstraction. You don't really see that. What you really see are the drawings down below. And the density, the allowable density using the R6 zoning is much higher. So to go to a single family home on each parcel, the visual density and the visual impact on the neighborhood would be much greater than what we're proposing. In the third question in the executive summary, excuse me, it says, has the applicant provided the necessary findings to approve the requested preservation incentives? So our preservation incentive request is grounded in the wetland preservation. So because of the wetland on the site, this has a very large impact on the buildable area of the site. It is equivalent to one parcel, nearly one parcel. It's between 4,000 and 5,000 square feet in size. So we are saying that we believe that preservation of that historic water feature in Kenema, the impact that preservation has is enough to justify, it's enough of a nexus to provide us the historic preservation incentives of being on the property line on Miller, on the property line on the right-of-way, and have 3 parking spaces in the right-of-way. Especially when you consider, add to that, you consider that the Kenema neighborhood has I will call it, the parking context of Kenema is that people park in the right-of-way. That is Kenema. It's very prevalent throughout Kenema. So we're saying we're going to actually pull the cars off the street as much as possible where you won't see them, for the most part, and we're doing planting mitigation on Miller Street so that it'll have a much less visual impact on Miller Street and on 4th Street. But we believe that there is enough justification to say yes to those historic preservation incentives that we're asking for. The fourth question is there appropriate mitigation such as landscaping and spacing between the proposed homes on the site to reduce the impact of the development on the surrounding neighbors and historic district? We will be showing that this submittal did not require a landscape plan. Trevor, could you forward to there's a landscape diagram in the same package, set of drawings. Could you forward to that? Oh, I have I'm sorry.
You're right.
Oh, yeah. Is it just the arrows?
Yeah.
Okay. So this is a landscape plan that we'll be submitting as a part of the site plan and design review, which we'll be submitting here shortly. This is a site plan diagram at the moment. We're not showing specific planting yet, but what I'd like to point out is, so on this drawing here, so this is the house on 4th, so that's house number 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7. So this existing hedge of Douglas firs, which are between us and the Cassidy house, is a very strong visual buffer between the two properties. There's parking on this part of the Cassidy property, so there are cars parked here on a daily basis. Similarly, there will be cars parked here on a daily basis. But we are also going to be providing a visual buffer down low between the two properties so that it will reduce the visual impact for our neighbor to the north. We're also planning visual buffer here between Miller Street and these homes. Again, remembering that this distance between the property line and the road is 30 feet here, and it grows to be larger as the road turns. And we're planning on landscaping in these areas according to the landscaping standards. The wetland here, which is clearly delineated in all the drawings that we submitted as a part of the application, will be preserved as a part of the site, and the plantings in those areas will be appropriate for a wetland area. We are working with a licensed landscape architect who's helping us in that. And then there will be also the yellow zone is additional landscaping on the property throughout the site, as well as there will be landscaping in these stormwater basins that will be throughout the site. These are stormwater basins adjacent to each home. And all the stormwater will be taken from these homes and put into a stormwater basin with landscaping and planting, and then taken into the stormwater into the street. So in terms of mitigation, visual mitigation, there's also going to be a planting buffer here in this right-of-way area between the Cassidy house and our property. So the Cassidy house will be largely surrounded by landscaping, so the visual impact of these homes to that home would be minimal. And I'd like to point out that the living residence of the Cassidy home is here. And these additional buildings on the property will be between the living and the homes here. So,
Hey, Chris, I'll give
Yeah.
you 2 more minutes.
2 more minutes? Right.
Yeah.
That's not enough time. So the last question is: are the homes designs contextually appropriate? There are multiple pages in the staff report that talk about some of the design considerations of each home, including window placement, railings, window cutouts, and such. We feel very confident that we can meet the specific design requirements for each home to meet the Kenema Historic Guidelines, and I think we're really close there. So those are addressing the executive summary comments, and I think I've covered almost everything else in terms of density. And also our historic preservation incentives that we're asking for and why we think that those are justified. The last thing I'd like to do is draw your attention to the model here, and I hope that everyone that's here tonight can come up here and look at the model and see what I'm talking about here. But what I'd
Oh,
like
I'm
to
sorry,
do-
Chris. Do you mind? Oh,
Yeah, I can rotate that.
no, I was just saying it's not getting caught on the
Speaker.
microphone.
You can stand near the microphones or talk loudly
Yeah.
so the microphones
Yeah.
can catch
Maybe
you.
rotate it back and stick it up so at least we can catch you on the mic. There you go.
How about? Should I
We'll use a laser pointer.
Sorry.
There's a laser pointer on that, right?
Yeah.
Awesome.
okay.
Yeah.
Thank you, sir.
Am I okay now?
Yep.
Is this good? Okay. So these are this is house number 6 and 7. This is Miller Street. This is house 6 and 7 that we're asking for the preservation incentive for these homes to be located on the property line. This model is a working model, so when this model was built, those 2 homes were not right on the property line, but they are now.
Chair
What I'd like to do
Metzen,
is I'd like to
is it okay if the audience comes up if...
Yeah,
To
anyone
see.
who'd like to stand up and take a look at where he's pointing the laser is welcome to.
Sorry, excuse me.
What I'd like to do is show how house number 6 and 7. These are the cottage homes, 25-foot height limit. The smaller density that I've just described, a 17% site coverage. And if we were to take these 2 homes off, the smaller ones off, and put on the model what could be built there in terms of a single-family home set back appropriately on the property, you can see that the visual impact and the density of the site between a 35-foot high single-family home compared to the cottage homes, the visual impact is much greater with that density, with what's allowed in terms of R6. So we believe that our proposal to do appropriately scaled cottage homes on the site, we've reduced it from 8 cottage homes down to 7. We are almost half the allowed density in terms of site footprint coverage on the property, according to the Kenema above 3rd Street guidelines. So we are dramatically lower than what is allowed, even in the kind of self-defined Kenema Historic District in terms of what we're proposing on the site.
And with that, I'll have to call time, but you will have time to come back up and speak again once we hear in favor and opposition. Thank you very much, Chris. It's a great model, by the way.
I'll just leave that.
Yeah, that'd be great. And with
I
that,
can't fit between, because it's not quite big enough to fit between.
With that, I'd invite
I
any.
don't think so.
Do we have any more
Would be
comment
great.
forms other than just one?
Just one.
Just one. Okay.
One more.
Okay, Clint, would you step up here, please?
Where'd he go?
Clint Goodwin? Okay. We move on to Paul. Name and address for the record. Is this different than what was provided in the record?
Yes, it is.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. My name is Paul Edgar. I'm a resident of Kenema and would like to make a comments that, first of all, I'd like to have a continuation of this to another meeting because I think conceptually we're trying to really look at this density and the number of houses and getting into the detail of each one of the houses and the windows and the cutaways are completely another issue. And right now we need to take a look at how this development fits into Kenema in an area where we've never had any type of density like this ever. I took and stripped out of the National Historic Preservation League document for principles to follow which align themselves with our criteria in 1740. But one of the first principles they list is, does the Kenema Historic District is significant as a collective whole and should be protected in the entirety. This proposed infill development compatibility changes the look and feel of the historic district and therefore is not compatible by design, density, the roads, because it's going to modify the road coverage right now. It paves over things. Parking, just basically look and feel. An additional principle is the construction should protect the integrity of the overall historic district in the same way an addition does to a historic building. Using an analogy of an add-on to a historic building, a wing must not detract from the historic building to be compatible, and not detracting. That is not true with this proposed development. It is different. The primary source for the Kenema National Historic Register District status are identified in the nomination document, defining characteristics to which infill construction should complement and inform. There's
Paul?
no parallel.
Paul, may I ask you to pause? You're almost out of time.
Okay.
Since we have a continuance requested, is there anything in addition to this? Because we'll have time to read this.
Yes, the biggest thing is that the roads and the cuts
Okay.
are much greater than 3 feet, 5 feet, 8 feet. They're 10 feet in a lot of areas. Number two is this area flooded over historically. And by making the cut there, the water flooded over Miller Street. It flooded into the basements of some of the houses along there. So this has happened in the last 20 years. And so we've had flood events in here, and a lot of the houses and a lot of the things that are being proposed are in areas that would be below or above the ordinary high water, well, below, they would be flooded. And so I think we have to really take a look at the site in detail, and cutting away on it is going to be significant.
Thank you very much, Paul. I appreciate your comments. With that, I'll invite Clint back up here. Hello, Clint. Name and address for the record.
Clint Goodwin, corner of 4th and Miller in the Cassidy house.
Thank you.
Is it possible, Trevor, if we could go back to the original slides that you brought about looking at the side view, or is those gone for good? The only thing I wanted to bring up, I mean, I provided a packet, I think 2 meetings ago to you guys with the standards of the new builds and stuff. And if you go through that and the stuff I presented to you and highlighted, it obviously shows the violations that we believe is happening. One thing I wanted to point out tonight is that area right there. There was a side view you had looking from between my house and the house on the other side of the property on 4th Avenue with a retaining wall. That retaining wall right there, that'll work. So in house number 1, where that car is parked in front of that house and you have one back in the driveway, standing on that asphalt road, looking at that property, the most reachable portion, if I were to stand up, is this high. That is the lowest portion of that grade. It is nowhere near 3.5 feet, and that is the lowest portion. As it peaks up, and you have another slide, it shows how far back the house will be set next to the neighbors. If you keep going on the slide, further. Okay, so right there, that at that top peak, which I believe house number 2 is going to be placed, and the parking area, that is around 10 to 12 feet deep at that point. If the builder is planning to go at street level, you're nowhere near 3.5 feet. I know per the building guidelines, I'm only allowed a 3.5 foot fence. If I'm able to do this, if he's able to do this, then I should be able to do other things as well. So I just want to point that out, that area right there is, if you were to look at it in person, you would see that it's at least 10 to 12 feet deep at that peak. Yeah. And that house that you see, my neighbor's house, I don't know if they fully understand, but they're building that retaining wall planned up to that property line, which is only about 4 feet to her house from that fence. And her house is going to be held up by a single retaining wall. Mm-hmm. That whole foundation of that house and the foundation on my side is going to be held by that wall. It doesn't fit in that neighborhood, you guys. It doesn't fit to the building conditions that we're given to what we could do. Mm-hmm. So I just want to point that out tonight. But as far as the other stuff we presented, I would please ask that you go over and look at it if you still have it, okay. And just read over it as you go over this.
I tell you, Clint, that's actually in my car, and I have not lost it. I will ask you just a couple questions, if I may. How would you respond to the incentive of the wetland and the density that could be built there? What are your if the developer was to propose a 30% lot coverage on that site, what would be your response?
So less buildings, more footage?
Please go back to the 3 options that were up there.
I would prefer, while you're doing that, I would prefer him, the builder,
3 site plans. Oh, thank you.
I would prefer to see 2 to possibly 3 large homes in that area rather than 7 little ones.
Well, 4 is the option.
Okay.
Would you rather see 4 large homes
than the 7?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. Okay.
But even so, with the grade taken out on the 4th Avenue, that doesn't go, and then with the parking lot, that doesn't fit.
Okay.
But I would rather see the less and more of a house
than
the tiny little ones, because he used the density measure, and the thing that he's, I don't think, understanding is, although on my property you have 3 buildings, only 1 is a living unit. That's the difference. There's only 1 living unit, and the rest is a garage, a barn, and a replica of a 1-room Amish schoolhouse.
Okay.
That's what that is.
I really just want to make sure that is truly your answer, that you think it would be more contextually appropriate to have 4 large houses with 4 ADUs in the area left over for development than what is currently proposed.
You're talking in the whole development, right?
Well, he's only got...
Which one are we looking at? I'm seeing 8.
One on the right.
So
that's 1 house and a garage?
You think this would be more contextually appropriate than this? As a community, that's the discussion we're having. Is this
Yes.
more
In my
fitting?
opinion, that is more than that. Although that sets the topography more evenly.
We're not talking about the
I
topography.
know,
we're
but
talking
this,
about
the left side, in my opinion, would go more with the neighborhood look compared to that one, but I don't think that one hits it either.
okay.
Because if you go by those guidelines that I turned into you guys,
Okay.
it says 1 house, 1 garage, 2 lots, south side of 3rd. That's the standard for 4th Avenue and Miller.
Yeah.
Go down that row, that's the standard, and it's clear in those rules that their new build should fit that standard.
Okay. Thank you, Clint. Okay. And then with that, I will invite Chris back up here. So, Chris, we didn't really give the board a chance to ask any questions, and I would like that to happen. But I want to give you an opportunity to rebut anything that was said or continue the conversation you're having.
I'll just take a few minutes to do that.
Yeah.
Trevor, could you do you have the entire HRB drawing set that we submitted with all the drawings?
Do you really want to? Well,
No, I'm not going to go through all. There's one particular drawing that I wanted to, what I think illustrates the retaining wall by house number 1 really well. There was it's like a section cut through the site showing.
oh yeah.
Second, Chair Metzen, would you like me to?
Yes, please. Yeah.
While they're, would it be appropriate for me to do some other things while they're looking for that?
Yep.
Okay. So, unfortunately, we do have the city code and the standards that are laid out for us already, including the Kenema Historic District standards, the cottage home standards, and the R6 standards, all which are sort of overlapping here in one project.
Okay.
But my understanding is that the Kenema Historic District and the Kenema character and context are really what we're talking about tonight in governing our decisions about the project. And when you think of it in that way and you consider that, I believe that our proposed density is far more contextually appropriate than the R6 zoning code and density. I also would say that the proposed design that we have proposed is much more in keeping with the look and feel of the Kenema district. And we want this project and this place to feel like it belongs in Kenema. We've gone to great lengths to show that. The drawing that I wanted to show, Laura, is if you could scroll through these, I'll just sort of tell you when to stop. There. No, sorry, keep going. Next. Right there. Okay. So I'd like to talk a little bit about the retaining wall adjacent to house number 1. So this is the house to the west of us. Okay? And this is a site cut section. So 4th is down here. The wetland is up here. This is house number 2, cutting through house number 2 and cutting through house number 3. And this shows the stepping retaining condition here. And this shows the stepping retaining wall along the property line, along the west property line adjacent to house number 1. So our intention is that it is true the retaining wall is up to 10 feet high when it gets back into the interior of the site, which is significantly far away from 4th, and this wall will also be clad in the appropriate kind of contextual material. But we're stepping the retaining wall so that when you get here, down where the property line occurs, the wall is only 3 to 4 feet high, if that. So I think everyone's concern about this retaining wall is maybe is not sort of grounded in what we're actually proposing. And this is what we're actually proposing here, along with landscaping that would mitigate that retaining wall, the visual character of that retaining wall. Similarly, here, looking back the other direction, this is our proposed house number 1 with the Cassidy house in the background there. And yes, we are pushing this house down closer to the street. This is the existing grade. And then that is the retaining condition adjacent to the Cassidy house, which we're also stepping down so that we're mitigating the visual impact of that.
Do you have any retaining wall facing the street over here that is over 3.5 feet?
When it comes down to the bottom sort of where it gets to be its lowest,
Mm-hmm.
I think it's 3.5 to 4 feet.
Okay.
I couldn't tell you exactly what
Okay.
at the moment, but it's
So probably
somewhere in
so.
that range.
Okay, that's fine.
Yeah.
Keep going.
Just lastly, wanted to reiterate the. Oh, sorry. There was one more document I wanted to look at quickly. Do we have the written comments that were submitted as a part of the application in here?
Yours or others?
No, the ones that were the public written comments.
Oh, yeah. I have a copy of that if staff doesn't.
There's actually one of the written comments that was submitted had the Kenema design guidelines with some highlighted areas in yellow.
Yeah.
And
That's right.
Oh,
There's this
just really
document.
quickly wanted to look at that. It's okay. I can describe it.
What do you want to touch
That'd
on
be
there?
Yeah. Near the back of that document, near the rear of the highlighted comments, there's the area where it talks about the sites from 3rd Street up and from 3rd Street to the south, talking about the 30% density coverage or lot coverage for this part of Kenema. And I just wanted to point out and reiterate that we are at 17% of the Kenema south of 3rd Street lot coverage. And with that, I'll conclude.
Thank you, Chris. Open up to questions for folks on the board.
I have a question regarding the parking. My understanding of the requirement is minimum of 1.5 parking spaces to be provided for each dwelling unit.
Yes.
Looking at the plot plan here, I see that you've provided 1 per unit.
We have 11 spaces total.
3 of them are on city property.
3 of them are in the right of way, yes. That's what we're
So
proposing.
you've provided 1 per unit.
We're proposing as part of a historic preservation incentive to allow us to do part of the parking for this development in the right of way.
I'm not sure that meets the requirement.
I would pause that discussion when we do
Yeah.
the site plan and design review analysis. We can get into those parking compliance,
Okay.
just to
Thank-
make it a little easier to
Thank
sort
you.
of narrow the scope of this.
Yeah.
But good question.
Anything else, Ken?
Not at the moment.
Okay.
I'll think of something.
Do you have any thoughts? Questions?
Yeah, there's a number of questions in the staff report about the appropriateness of the specific walls that have a large portion of the windows, that particularly the ones facing the wetland. Seemed like there wasn't a great deal of detail in your submission on that. Do you have anything to add, I guess, on the appropriateness of that?
Yeah. When in our application, we pointed out several places around Kenema where there are large window openings in homes. I don't have that in front of me right now, but there were several instances, and the closest example of that is right next door, the house to the west of us. The east facade of that house. In fact, it's in. Could you go to the? Sorry, I keep looking at Trevor when Laura probably has it. But there's a photograph of that facade here in this sequence of photographs right there, where there's a very large kind of window wall in this home, with it's almost the entire. It's most of the facade as a glass opening. So we think that there's a lot of context and a lot of examples of homes in Kenema that have a mixture of the more traditional punched openings at a 1:2 scale, but there's also several places where we find this kind of condition with large walls of glass. However, we have in our scheme, in our proposal, we have all of our elevations that are facing the public realm have kept the more traditional window openings, but the window openings and the facades facing the wetland or facing the interior of the property, we've opened them up with more glass. So we're mitigating that we're mitigating the possible visual impact on the neighborhood by saying we'd like to open it up to the wetland, to the green space, in what we believe is a Kenema contextually appropriate way.
So you're saying in the large walls where you have majority windows, you're keeping similar widths in those sliding doors as you see here on this picture in front of us.
Similar, yes.
So this was a precedent for several panels in a row.
Right.
Okay. Any other thoughts or questions?
No.
Okay. Great.
To me, this does have windows, but they're casement, and totally more appropriate to the architecture of the house and everything. Where yours are like glass walls and it's cut in, to me it looks very, very modern, as opposed to, and there was a couple of them that really screamed to me more like.
Maybe we could go to one of those drawings.
Going so fast.
Yeah,
But-
we're looking for one with a glass wall.
We're looking for
Well,
the
like-
modern.
There it is.
Yeah, like
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
So here,
And-
yes.
It's not, anywhere near, in keeping with the, and I know you want to, be able to determine the difference between, old and new, but obviously this is all new, but to me that looks like, especially this lower one where it shows somebody up on the deck up there,
Here.
on the
Yes.
balcony. To me that looks like should be a chalet. I have a real problem with that, and also with the skylights. But I know that they're facing, away from the right of way. But they kind of, it's such a large expanse, and then there's just the skylights.
Okay.
Perhaps there are ways for us to, in this wall here. Perhaps there's a way to make that more contextually appropriate in a way where maybe the divisions between the glass could become larger.
Either that or not go all the way to the floor.
Well, it's a door. You kind of have to go all the way to the
Oh.
floor. Yeah. I will say for everyone's benefit that this drawing up on the projector is elongated. It's wider. So it appears in the drawings that we're looking at that are to scale, those doors are roughly 4 feet wide. Whereas they appear larger up there. So
Yeah, that's an unfortunate result of this image getting stretched.
yeah,
in this,
that's not your fault. That's ours. But I want to say it for everyone's benefit. Okay. All right. I guess I'm really not convinced that those 10-foot retaining walls in any way meet the standard. I would invite you one more time to convince me. I know it's 40 feet, 50 feet back from the right of way. How is that contextually appropriate? I'm not sure.
You're asking me a question?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm not asking a leading question. I'm not trying to
Yeah.
jab at you.
Sure. We have photographic survey of Kenema and
Okay.
retaining walls all around Kenema that are that high. We felt like because of that and because of the way we're mitigating that retaining wall, that when you're out at the street front, it gets higher as it goes back into the site.
Are they retaining walls such as basement walls that are a part of a building, or are you talking about actual retaining walls just holding up earth? That are
Retaining walls holding up earth in Kenema that are larger than what we're proposing.
Okay. Would you take pictures of those and submit those? If they were in here, I did not see it, and I apologize. But if it's not,
Yeah, in our application we have some examples.
Okay, I missed that. Okay, I'll take another look.
Maybe it wasn't documented in a way that really illustrated the point, but
Okay.
and we're certainly, that is a challenging edge of the site between us and the house to the west,
Yeah.
and we're trying to do it in a way that makes sense in Kenema.
And
What
I'll-
we're showing today is not a construction document.
Right.
It's a first. Well, it's beyond first,
It
but
could go up or it could go down.
Well, it's-
the height of the wall.
it's going to go down.
Okay.
I want it to go down because I don't want to. I'd rather not pay for a 10-foot retaining wall either. So
Sure.
yeah.
All right.
But there are a lot of retaining walls in Kenema
Okay.
that are very tall, holding up earth, not just attached to homes.
Okay. I will say, as far as this application, that is the hardest thing that I have justifying looking at it. Because you're proposing to dig into the hillside to create this parking lot. So it's not as if we're mitigating an existing slope, we're creating one in a way. So I guess from the application, I would encourage you to find a place or two with a historically appropriate house, hopefully not one that was scabbed in the neighborhood somewhere, that has a retaining wall in which it was cut in intentionally to create a flat area for parking or a house to be built or something. Do you follow what I'm saying?
Sure, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm sure I could drive the neighborhood and find it. I just don't have the time to do that, nor should I do that. So I would encourage you to do that.
Yes.
Okay. Any other last thoughts?
One last thought is when we came for the design advice
Okay.
meeting, the basic communication was have a really good understanding of Kenema, show us the precedents of what's in Kenema and the character of Kenema, the context of Kenema,
Mm-hmm.
and come back and describe that to us and show that to us
Mhm.
so that we can make a good decisions about this project.
Yeah.
And I think if you look through our application from cover to cover and read every word from word to word from cover to cover, I think you'll see that we have. I think you'll see that this proposal is meeting those requirements. And lastly, I want to say that in a way, I don't disagree with one of the comments earlier saying maybe we need to talk about this a little bit more. But I would be elated and happy with a decision tonight about the project, and then continue into the site plan and design review and work with staff to really kind of fine tune the details of the project.
And with that,
I think
I'll
that'd
have
be
to say,
wonderful.
we're cutting off here. I can tell you that we can't come to a decision tonight because there's been a request for continuance. We have to push on to the next. We can't have some deliberation tonight, but our hands are tied in that matter. But thank you very much. Yeah.
Can I add one
Oh,
question?
sure.
Sorry.
Oh, sorry.
I know that you've only had the staff report for a short amount of time, but have you done any preliminary analysis on whether you would be able to comply with the setbacks that were discussed earlier if the preservation incentives were not granted?
Yes. If you earlier when I illustrated the three site plans side by side, there was one there that showed 8 cottage homes with the parking on the property. Without going into the right of way, without any homes being on the property line. So have we done an exhaustive study of what that could be? No, we haven't. It would push the development to have the parking more visible from the streets, which I don't think would be appropriate for Kenema. In terms of the amount of parking and the visual mitigation of the parking. I think the scheme that we have today is the most appropriate of those 3 diagrams.
Sure. So I see that. Well, so house 5 in the middle is on the alleyway.
Yes.
So there's some issues there probably, but in the other cases, are you saying that you believe this plan would comply with all the setbacks for front, side, backyard, corners, house separation?
Yeah. We would ask for a right-of-way vacation in that middle site plan.
Okay. Thank you.
All right. Thank you very much, Chris. All right. Trevor, anything else before we...
So, I guess as you're talking, is there anything that you would like to, any direction that you would like to give to me? Any questions that you have on any of the items that you would like further staff review on? Is there anything along those lines?
Gosh, I am grateful that we didn't get seven separate submittals and applications for this project.
Yeah.
I'll say
This
that
was
right
bad
now.
enough, but
And I think you did a really good job of pulling a lot of information apart and getting some pretty good conditions here. I do think that we need to tweak them a bit. We're not going to come to a conclusion tonight. I don't have any questions for you. Claire?
no, not really. I guess my big, like I said before, my big bone of contention is the fenestration and all that. So.
Yeah. Ken?
My big bone of contention is the parking issue. And if that's to be addressed in the site planning process, fine. I'd
Is
kind
that
of
in
like
our
to have a
purview?
hint out front, though.
But I think that
Is
there's, Laura can correct me if I'm wrong, I don't mean to interrupt, but I think there's a difference between the parking requirements for site plan design review and then the contextual appropriateness of separate parking lots, in effect, in Kenema. And where they are located and how they fit into the design. That, I think, is separate than the site plan question that Laura was answering to you about 1.5 spaces.
Okay.
Do you see the difference?
Yes.
Is that in our purview or?
I think the
Contextually
question of the
appropriate.
contextual
Contextual,
appropriateness
right.
of parking lots
Right.
and whether
But not
they
the requirement
exist,
as far how.
not how many the
Okay,
number
That's
is.
what I was.
Yeah.
thinking.
As far as contextual precedent, we've got at least one multifamily complex with a very large parking lot, and so there's precedent for that, but I would not support that. That is my viewpoint, that breaking up the parking into different segments, one, it kind of has to happen on the site, but two, I would encourage on pretty much any site that's a corner lot that they could do that on, and bring it off the street. Makes a lot of sense in my opinion. Grant?
My issues are really just the items that are listed on each house as unresolved issues, basically on the roof cutouts and on the windows. Those are both noted on several houses, but not specifically addressed in the conditions yet.
Okay. Given that we don't have any questions,
What
Carrie,
is-
go ahead.
I'm just throwing this out there. There are a lot of conditions here, and you might suggest that the applicant come back with some drawings showing what these conditions would result in. I mean,
Okay.
I don't know that I have I couldn't, I mean, I think it's easy to read these and say, yeah, sounds good, but
What will they look
until,
like?
what will they look like?
Yeah.
And maybe that would help you move this discussion further down the road of, oh, that's really not what I want the condition to say with regard to house 3, because a lot of these
Sure.
are sort of standard conditions that are applicable to all the houses, and it may make sense for one and not for another. I just don't have,
The way the site.
you don't have any drawings, I don't think, of what implementing these conditions would look like.
Okay.
Just throwing it out there as a suggestion for the applicant.
Yeah, and Chris, I may suggest that, or you may not choose to tackle all of these conditions. There's 20 different ways to approach each of these, and so approaching all of them would be ridiculous. But a couple that are really important to you that you feel like you need to address, such as it sounds like Claire takes issue with large portions of glazing and what she referred to as the chalet. It may be smart to tackle that in some fashion of how these conditions would affect these houses, or if there's some other manner you'd go about it. Given that we don't have questions for staff, I would open this up to some brief conversation.
Excuse me, it's really hard for us to hear back here.
Oh, you're sorry for me to hear?
Yeah, that's
Hear me? Okay, I apologize.
Oh,
So
sorry.
I will say that this is the only application I've ever had sitting on this board that someone has asked it to be a larger house and larger massing. That amazes me. And Clint, I don't want to disparage you, and I saw someone in the front row agree with you. But in 5 or 6 years, I've never had that suggestion. So,
Well, this is like uncharted territory for us, having, and also I think the city, you have 3 little houses, but not really any kind of a cottage development. So I mean,
we do have some, just not many.
We
have
never approved a cottage home
cottage
before.
yeah,
One
We have the
abounds right over
3
by Mike's Drive-In.
Not officially a cottage home, just
Not
a site
official.
plan design review.
Oh.
So,
Okay.
Yeah.
so that's I think one of the reasons that we're
Okay.
belaboring it a lot, and I think we want to make sure that what we do is right, as far as precedent and stuff too.
Yeah. I look at the other site plans that were put in front of us, and there are lots of other ways to go about it, but not really, because we've got 8 houses on a very constrained lot, and I think the other ones are ugly as sin, and I would. I look at the houses that would come out of the option over there, and think, gosh, those are really broken up and would look horrible in execution. The one in the center, you'd have 4 cookie cutter houses, and then some others that could be unique, but given the way they're laid out, you're going to have 3 houses staring into someone's backyard, and a lot of parking lot facing Miller Street, with house number 8 in a really weird predicament with a car parked on either side of it. I think, I truly believe that the 0 lot line setback is in no way unique to this site, and it happens a lot of places, both in Kenema and the McLaughlin neighborhood. I think that the houses are spread apart as much as possible, and given enough variety. And when you look at that model, I think that's a lot more telling than this site plan. And I would encourage everyone in here to get up and take a look at it, because when you look at that model, you can get a really good idea about the heights in comparison to the other buildings. That the size of the structures are relatively similar or smaller than the ones around it. It's hard to argue that model. I would say that, again, the retaining wall, I take some issue with. I see the constraints of it. If you were to try and get 3.5-foot retaining walls, you'd have a lot of staggering and no room for the parking lot. The other option, in my opinion, would be moving that parking lot to the front, which I don't think anyone in this room would support. But I would welcome you to come up here next month and speak to that if you do. yeah, there's just so many things to say because there's so much going on here. But I'll.
Do you want to
Yeah.
do a little break so that people can come up and do that? Or
Um,
not? We have another applicant, but.
well, we'll take a break before we go to the next applicant, I think. Yeah. I think that's all I have to say for tonight on this. But I will open it. I mean, this is the conversation here.
But you said everything.
And so well, the architect.
And I will say that if we were to entertain the large sliding glass doors, my recommendation would most likely be that they be no more than 3 feet wide and not of vinyl or another extrusion that could be thin. It would need some thickness to it. I think Claire was spot on. That was my thought exactly. So that
Casement.
yeah,
Casement
well, it
treatment
doesn't.
or something.
It would need to
similar.
give an appearance that it had some thickness to it. And granted, this is on the back of the house. It could never be viewed from the right of way because the nearest right of way that would be visible is way up a hill beyond a bunch of trees. But given everything else and all of the stretching that it's asking for, I would say that something with some thickness in those sliding glass doors would be appropriate. Gosh, and the wetlands is a huge intrusion into the site and justifies variances. Perhaps not the ones that are requested, but quite nearly the ones that are requested, in my opinion. So with that, unless anyone else has anything to say, I'll shut up. We'll take
I think you've got it.
5-10 minutes.
You want to do a motion for continuance to March 28th?
Oh, sure. I'll
So
entertain.
moved.
Second.
Okay.
Okay. All right. Board member Met,
Aye.
board member Basinger,
Aye.
board member Blythe,
Aye.
Chair Metzen.
Aye.
Motion passes.
Okay. With that, we'll take a 5-minute break.
And just to clarify,
And
I was getting used to the mood lighting. I just got light in here.
I was going to say.
all right, we are back.
Okay, and we're going to change order of the agenda. Let's take on PC 17022, Historic Review Board concurrence on solar panels at 215 Washington Street. Trevor?
yes, 1 second here.
Before you cut to the staff report, I think
Okay.
we need to do the ex parte contacts
Oh.
discussion.
Yeah.
So, have any of you had any? This is a continued hearing, as I understand it.
We're flipping them quickly,
Oh, okay.
and then we'll come back to it.
Okay. I did the disclosures earlier in terms of the audience's obligation to testify and to raise issues. I'm not going to restate that, but I do need to know if any of you have had any ex parte contacts with regard to this particular application, conflicts of interest, or a site visit.
I will say that I spoke
Yes.
briefly with the applicant in the last meeting, not directly related to this, and I have not seen anything he has submitted.
No comment.
Anybody else?
Nope.
Anybody wish to question the board members with regarding these disclosures? Now you can proceed with the staff report.
Great. So, yes, okay. So this is just staff level concurrence or staff concurrence. So this is for solar panels at 215 Washington. Asking the Historic Review Board to just review the staff findings and to decide whether or not the requests that the staff can approve this request at the staff level, if not, make any findings to direct staff for any further action to bring this back to the Historic Review Board for maybe a public hearing. The applicant is requesting to install solar panels on his home at 215 Washington Street. The conditions of approval are all solar panels shall be installed so they're not visible from the Washington Street right-of-way, and all mechanical equipment relating to the solar panel installation shall be screened and not visible from the public right-of-way. And I have some pictures up on the projector, briefly showing where, or approximately showing where the solar panels will be located. So it would be on the west side of the home, kind of right here, up on the screen. So there's a small black square up there, and you can kind of see it from this angle too. This so right. I'll get into that in just a second. Right here. And these are the types of solar panels that would have been requested. They are a matte solar panel, low profile, that will run with the roof line. It will not stick up a great deal above the home. And when looking at the home from here it is from Washington Street, should not be visible from looking at the home from in front of the home. So staff is requesting HRB input and further direction, I guess, if any.
Okay. Any thoughts or questions for staff?
Has the McLaughlin neighborhood made comments on that at all?
No, this hasn't gone out for any sort of public review or anything like that.
Okay.
And this is a conversation I hope to have later on in the year. But there are several items that staff can do at the staff level, and we think that this can potentially be one of those. So it hasn't. We think we can just do it like an over-the-counter sort of review.
Okay. Any other questions for staff?
This says it's individually listed property on the Register of Historic Places. Is that just on the local inventory or on the national?
It's on the local and
Local.
I believe national. No, it's not a national. Just a local.
Because it
yeah.
would take it to a different level if it was on the national. So it's just
local.
It's just a
Yeah.
designated, locally designated. Okay.
Okay. I would take issue with it if it was facing the street face, given that it's not on the primary facade. I would entertain a motion to approve.
We are setting a precedent.
We
Or
are?
just approve. It's going to be basically what we're approving is that it can be approved on the staff level without having to come before the board, right?
So you're approving solar panels that are not on a front-facing facade that can be approved at the staff level.
Okay.
Correct.
Yeah.
Okay. I just wanted to.
So it's more of a policy.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
That's the caveat I threw out there. And we can take this up in a work session to deliberate more later
Okay.
on. in the year.
Cool.
Um,
I move that we approve that it can be approved at the staff level.
Okay. Are you making
Solar
a
panels.
motion to approve PC 17?
Yes, sorry.
022?
Yes. Motion to approve. Where is? I don't
It's
think
the
there
last
is.
one on the front of the page.
You can
I know,
just-
but there's no.
There's no file number
File
for
number.
it right now.
That's what I'm like. Wait a minute.
Okay.
Right, yeah.
So, just that we approve the request to that it can be approved at the staff level. Is that-
I'm looking for a motion to approve PC 17-022.
I think it's showing up on the screen, but not on the
Okay.
agenda. So
Yeah.
it's a file that's going to show
And
up
it
on your
doesn't have to be
screen, but
clear.
not on the
Okay.
agenda. I hear a motion to approve the solar panels at 215 Washington Street. Is
Is that
that
right?
correct?
Yes.
Okay,
Is there
thank
a
you.
second?
Second.
Okay. All right. Board Member Met,
Aye.
Board Member Basinger,
Aye.
Board Member Blythe,
Aye.
Chair Metzen.
Aye.
Motion approved.
Motion carries. Thank you. No, sorry, left confusion card. That's great. All right.
Fine.
Thank you for showing up today. We will jump back to PC 1720, HR 1602, construction of a new single-family dwelling at Kenema National Register Historic District on 4th Street.
Okay.
Once again,
Yep.
do any HRB members have had any ex parte contacts, conflicts of interest, bias, or any other statement to declare since you all reviewed this application last time?
No.
None.
No.
None.
Any member of the audience wish to question the board members on any of these disclosures? Or the lack of disclosures, I guess it should be. All right, Trevor, you're on.
Thank you. So this is from a continuation at our previous historic review board. So what I'm bringing back to you today is a change in some of the conditions of approval and change of some of the conditions within the staff report, changes to the connected garage and let's see here. Let's see. I believe the connected garage was the most of what I was changing. Other than that, there aren't really any changes in the proposed home from last time. There aren't any changes in the site plan. There aren't any changes to the building. Oh, I remember the other thing. It was also the removal of some of my language I had on the ornamentation around the windows and the peaks of the home. The board felt that what was in the design was appropriate for the submitted house. So that being said, the changes that were made because and the main one, the attached garage, felt appropriate because the applicant had gone through design advice. They had moved their home. They had shifted the house around. They had gone through renoticing, and they felt that the general consensus was that they've done everything they could to reduce the massing of the home given the topography of the site. They then recessed the attachment of the portion of the home connecting to the garage, and as further effort to reduce and mask any of the massing, they're also installing, I believe here, rockery work and landscaping on the side and in the back of the home to help reduce any visual impacts created by the massing of the home.
Okay.
And that's it. Yeah.
All right. Thank you very much. And if we had any more public comments, please bring your comment form forward. With that, I would invite the applicant up. Thank you, Robert. Please state your name and address for the record.
My name is Dave Green. I'm the applicant. My address is 7537 Southeast 116th Avenue in Portland.
Robert.
And I do have both the staff reports, so the 4 points that they removed, I can read those off if you want, or you may have that in front of you, but the 4 points that they removed in their change, I have those here. Those 4 points that were removed in the staff report were, number one, garage connected with the enclosed breezeway. Number two, the ornamentation above the windows. 3, the ornamentation in the peaks of the house. And 4, the massing in the rear of the home. The topography has made the design of the home appear to have more stories than allowed. The connected breezeway also contributes to a larger mass on the back side of the property and removes the square design features desired in the Kenema Historic District. And so those were the previous staff problems with it that have been removed from the revised application, the revised staff report. So I have not made any design changes since the previous meeting because it appeared that we were closing in on an acceptable design. A couple things that I would like clarified, I guess. There, of course, has been discussion about screening, and I think in another place they removed some question about screening, and in their final summary seems to be that the staff is satisfied with just the vegetative screen that I planned in the back to reduce the massing. There is in the presentation a picture from 4th Street, from the middle of 4th Street on the east side, looking at that east side of the house, and it's significantly screened with existing vegetation that would remain. So I don't think that vegetative screening, any additional, will have any public merit. Ultimately, I would be adding some just for privacy between the house to the east and my house, and I think they would be interested in that as well, but I don't see it having any public impact. So and of course you'll have things that you may want to bring up, but things that I would like to clarify, I guess, that there's a little bit of inconsistency maybe in some of the, in my mind, in the staff language, but was regarding the screening, because at one point they had suggested planting trees that would grow to a mature height, and I don't see that as necessarily helpful in screening the massing. Second point that I would like to address is I submitted a product approval request for Milgard Ultra fiberglass windows, and a little description of some language, and you may have that available. The default approved window, I think, on a fiberglass window is the Marvin Integrity product. Milgard makes a very similar window, the Milgard Essence series, but the Milgard Ultra series is very similar on the outside. It just doesn't have the wood jamb extension integral on the interior part of the window, and I would prefer to do my own jamb extensions on the inside. So that would be one thing, and I'm not sure if that's done at staff level or if that's something that the board needs to approve, but I would be looking for clarification if that product is suitable. It appears from the language that they removed that there was some discussion about the vertical siding, the peaks, and it appears that has been removed as a concern at staff level. I just want to have clarification on that. And then the fourth consideration, I guess, that I would look to the board to for suggestion is roof pitch. There has been a couple of comments from neighbors feeling that a 12-12 roof pitch would be more appropriate for the vernacular style, and I think I agree with that, but that does increase the massing, which has been a concern. So, and I mentioned that briefly in the last meeting, but I'm open to the priority that the board members would see regarding roof pitch either way. So I think that's basically what I'm bringing forward at this point.
Okay. Do we have any questions for the applicant? Nope. Okay, thank you very much. Do we have any other comment forms come in?
No.
Okay.
We did not.
With that, I'll invite Paul Edgar to come up and speak.
Thank you again. Paul Edgar, Kanema. This lot has a over 30% slope on it from 4th Avenue down to 3rd Avenue. By code of 1744, there's only can have a limited number of residents. I don't know that the code allows even for this house to be permitted based upon city code.
It does.
Okay, That's one thing. The width of the house is beyond the scope of what we have in Kenema. So there's not any historic precedence of any of the contributing historic houses that are of this width. So this creates a significantly greater frontage right on 4th Avenue. The historic areas also is platted and mapped by Dogami as having landslides on it. And so there is this problem of the fact that it has that mapping done by the State Department of Geology, and I think that's a significant issue and should be considered, and particularly because of the slope there. The windows on it, I would love to see, like the back windows and even windows as a whole, to be clustered more historically in appearance instead of big glass windows, glass doors and sliding doors. This is not, we're deviating in design from what historically has been there and what is, so that it creates an inappropriate, incompatible design profile. I think we can do better. I would hope that there could be some mitigation to this. The water that flows off of 4th Avenue flows down there will flow right down into the driveway of this house because you can't have curbs in the Kenema Historic District. And so when all of a sudden I'm creating conditions with that house and with the way the driveway is that could lead to a significant disaster. It could make this area that is landslide prone even more subject to a landslide.
Okay, thank you very much. I will make a note that landslides are not a part of our purview. Geological hazards are not a part of our purview. Historical appropriateness is. Well, with that, I'll invite.
Width.
What's that?
What about the width?
That is. Yep.
Yeah.
I'll invite the applicant to come back up if you'd like to talk again.
A couple of the points,
Okay.
and I think you mentioned that it is approved for one dwelling, that it had been two separate parcels, and I did a pre-app before I made an offer to purchase, and they advised me at that point that because those were contiguous ownership, they would need to be combined, that it would require only one dwelling on 10,000 square feet. So I believe that test is met. As far as width of buildings, there are, and I didn't go get an inventory, but there are a number of buildings that are 50 feet or wider, and the Captain Miller house that I used as a, you might say, a precedent for the connecting breezeway is certainly wider than 50 feet. So I think there is precedent for the building width. The geohazards, of course, will be addressed in the geotech review. There are no sliding doors planned. We have double French doors. Probably the unit that is in question would be on the upper deck. The 4-panel, it's a double French door with transoms as shown with fixed door side lights. That door actually will not, because of the slope of the lot, will not afford a public view of that door. So, and then as far as water management, there again, when we get into our civil design, I'm as interested as anybody to make sure that the water is collected and connected appropriately so that there's no hazard to my property or anybody else's. So,
do we have any other questions for the applicant?
My question, as far as the rear, with his tall, and we discussed this last time about having some trees or vegetation or something planted back there.
And what
we recommended.
What I'm proposing, and I may show on the side view, it doesn't show on this rear elevation. I think this is an older This is an older view
So
of the
you-
building before it was shrunk and so forth. I'm proposing a vegetation screen below that would be 6 feet high, basically like a 6x6 mesh that would get vines planted on there to try to establish a vegetation screen as you look from above, and basically just obscure the lower, essentially 6 feet of the house, just to make it visually appear.
Right. That's fine during the spring and the summer, but during the winter it doesn't.
Well, it would need to be some type of an evergreen.
Evergreen?
An evergreen
I
type
guess you could handle it
screening.
with that.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. And I did in my design addendum. I think we had it available last time, but I showed an example of just basically a job I was working on. I took a picture of where they had planted wisteria on a 3-foot cyclone fence, and when you looked up at that property, it virtually screened the front of the house, just what had grown along a 3-foot cyclone fence. So it's just that same
Okay.
concept.
Okay. I don't have any other questions for the applicant at this point. Thank you very much. So, Trevor, this reminds me a lot of the application we talked about last month on Washington Street. Was it Washington? Yeah. Jason Tony's Fish Market, where they had a deck that was unscreened.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
And I keep coming back to this deck as an issue. And I think if it was screened, and I think that's a part of the standard code, it should be.
Right. Yeah. It's.
And I did not see that in the staff report, but I think that should be a condition of approval.
Okay.
I said that as a question. No, I think it should be a condition.
Right. Right. Okay. Yeah.
For sake of conversation here, I think it's really interesting that we have two projects with
Right.
with big sliding glass doors, not facing the right of way.
These are
That is-
French doors, though.
Are they French doors?
Yeah, he
They're all
said,
French.
yeah.
No sliding
They're
doors.
not
Oh, okay.
sliding. Yeah.
Which
Which makes a huge difference to me.
in appearance, and yeah, I can see that. I can see that. But if the sliding doors were of the same type of door, because aesthetically, when you're 50
Right.
to 150
Feet
feet
back.
away, can you tell the difference? I don't think you can.
No, but this is on, it juts out, right?
No, that's flush with the face.
Oh, I'm looking, okay.
Totally
I'm
obscured
looking at
from the
the,
right of
yeah,
way.
yeah, yeah, okay.
And I agree, you're not going to be able to see it from the lower street.
That's it.
So,
Yeah,
that's okay.
but I mean, that's, and plus he has, like transoms, I guess, about, or set so I mean, it does kind of, break it up, plus having the French doors does break it.
Yeah.
That's
This-
elevation with the
Yeah.
arch.
That's old.
It's this one.
That's not the current.
That's
Yeah,
not,
right. There still are small transims above.
yeah,
Yep. Yep. You got
yeah, yeah.
it. Okay. I took a look at the Milgard Ultra on my phone. I think those windows are totally appropriate.
We'll go by your recommendation.
In the future, the applicant ought to bring samples. We ought to
Okay.
not refer to things from your phone.
Okay.
Just-
That's
Did he provide
probably a
samples
good
to you?
idea.
I believe he not physical samples, but samples that I can forward on to you. Yes.
I think
Okay.
the condition says or equivalent, so I think equivalent can fall into staff's judgment, I would
Okay.
imagine.
So with the added condition of approval of screening the porch, the lower section of the porch, that doesn't
the
have
rear.
a door in front of it. Yeah,
On the rear.
In the rear. I would entertain a motion to approve.
And so in this motion, we want to really specify, because you have design guidelines that don't allow the
Oh.
attached garage in the sub-basement, so why
Okay.
is this contextually different in this particular case only?
Okay. Well, it is because
Just so we can get this in
because of the
this
slope
record.
of 30%, as Edgar brought up. The alternative solution would be to have an elongated house that has a larger massing as it retreats down the hill, which would be very inappropriate. They have broken up the front of the building and the massing overall with an enclosed breezeway, which is recessed both on the front and the back of the building. And I think there's precedent in the neighborhood for that. And there are also historically appropriate houses in the neighborhood with similar widths.
The
with
Cochran House,
similar
the
mass.
Fellows House, the
Yes.
Miller House, to name 3.
There we go. With similar breaks and massing. And anyone's welcome to add more to that.
And that's all part of the motion?
Well, those are findings to go along
Did
with
you
this.
write? Huh?
Those are findings to go along
No,
with
no,
it.
I know.
Okay.
Last week we discussed the projection of the upper deck,
Yeah.
extending beyond the lower deck. Do we have any additional thoughts on that, or should a condition be that they project an equal amount, that the upper deck be pulled back to the depth of the lower?
I think it's ridiculous. I've said it every time, but no one else has issue with it, so I'm not going to make an issue of it.
Do you think it's
Do you
I do.
have-
I'm gonna move that we add that as a condition of approval, that
Okay.
the projection be equivalent for the upper and lower deck.
What's normally done? I mean, I have no history to know, were they stacked like that, or were they recessed? Sure.
Not at this time. I'm sorry. Gosh, stacked decks are done. I can't think of one in this neighborhood.
502 and 507 4th Avenue. 4th Avenue, yeah.
Okay.
There is one?
Those are not historical homes, but,
No.
but
Okay.
there are stacked
They're
decks.
stacked.
Yeah. And they would often have more articulation than what's shown here. But
Okay.
so if you have thoughts, you're welcome to weigh in or suggestions on how that could be changed.
I guess I just don't to me it doesn't matter,
Okay.
for lack of,
Okay. I think perhaps a better comment would be that you don't have a better
I
suggestion.
don't have, okay, thank you.
right.
To be politically correct.
So, just to get this straight, so you're gonna make the recommendation to move the deck back to reduce it. I guess what findings I suppose would go along with that? What argument, I suppose?
That it's not historically appropriate to cantilever essentially a third-story deck over top of a second-story deck in the way that's being illustrated. I mean, do we need findings to show that something's...
Ideally, yes.
No, I mean, I think that to say that it's not historically appropriate to cantilever a deck, that's a finding that
Yeah.
is a finding.
Okay.
So I think that would lead to a condition that says you can't cantilever a third-story deck over a second-story deck.
Okay. Thank you, Carrie. Okay.
That added a lot of clarity.
Or just a lot of repetition, maybe. You say it enough times, right?
Yeah. Did we have any other thoughts or conditions we want to add?
Can we ask Mr. Green what the consequences of that change would be from his perspective?
Need to have a smaller deck. We've closed the public hearing, and I don't think we can...
Okay.
I guess we could open it back up, but
Your discretion.
I'd rather not. Okay, so do we have a motion to approve with the stated conditions,
Including the shortened deck.
including the shortened deck?
That would be number 6.
Do you want to restate the condition?
Yes. So the conditions would be screening on the side and the rear of the home, and a reduced upper deck. The conditions to be added.
Landscape screen.
Landscape screening. Yes.
The conditions to be added?
Yeah, the conditions that are to be added. Those are the ones I'm talking about right now.
Oh, when I was talking about screening, I was not talking the side and the rear of the home. I was talking about the basement portion of the deck.
Okay, yeah, no, I can clarify
Yeah,
that. Yeah,
okay.
for the basement portion, yes.
Yeah, just as what's in the historic guidelines.
Okay.
Do we have a motion to approve HR 1602?
So moved, subject to the conditions stated.
Okay, do we have a second?
Second.
Thank you.
All right. Board Member Met,
Aye.
Board Member Basinger,
Aye.
Board Member Blythe,
Aye.
Chair Metzen.
Aye.
Motion passes.
Okay, thank you very much. All right, and with that, we will move on to item 4B, design advice for PC 17-023. So when should we?
Trevor will have a presentation,
Yeah,
an
so
introduction for you.
Yeah, so this is for the, well, I want me to pull up the. So the design advice is for the Hackett Hospitality Project and down on approximately 15th and Washington. There's the Hackett House that's adjacent to a parcel of land, and we recently had a pre-application conference with some with some people who are interested in redeveloping that land. They wish to retain the Hackett House. But because it's an individually listed property, the Hackett House is an individually listed property, and they're altering the site in which the individually listed property is located. They're going to have to come to the Historic Review Board in the future for future mitigation of the Hackett House, so that the adjacent development doesn't completely, I guess, remove it from its site. So somehow integrate the property and to continue it as either some sort of functional space or to not remove it from its site, basically. So what we would be looking at.
Okay.
And we have one of the architects here tonight who is looking to make a presentation and get some design advice from the Historic Review Board on, I guess, steps moving forward. So.
Okay.
I just want to reiterate that it's design advice, it's non-binding, and then as Assistant City Attorney, do we have to do any legal or any declarations?
No, in fact, I could leave.
Oh, wow.
And it is,
Come on.
it's different on my screen here than it is there, so I'll work on not stretching it.
Okay. All right, Carrie, get out of here. Save the city some money.
I'm going to save you all some
Thank
money.
you. Yeah.
Really nice to see you all again.
Good to see you too. Okay, I'll invite Lloyd to come up.
You get to get out early.
Thank you. So we have only cards from the applicant. So, no, you don't have to declare anything.
Okay.
So we have cards submitted from the applicant, Lloyd Hill and Mark Foley. Yeah, Trevor's.
Lloyd, can we actually put him up over there as a step?
Is it better over there?
Yeah, sorry.
So I guess I kind of go off the narrative that was provided. This is part of an overall family residential and hotel and retail development that will be taking place on this subject site. Historic Hackett House fronts 17th Street and will remain as an office, restaurant, or retail use, anchoring the south end. Pedestrian and bicycle access to a future mass transit stop on Main Street could be provided by either an at-grade railroad crossing on 17th Street, or a possible future bicycle and pedestrian pathway along Abernathy Creek with a connection under the railroad tracks. A hotel of approximately 100 rooms will be located adjacent to the Hackett House and is planned as the first phase of this development. The lobby floor of the hotel will be elevated above the Washington Street at 52 feet, or to keep the floor above the flood elevation. Let's see here. Primary vehicular access will be from Washington Street between Building A and Building B. Secondary vehicle access will be provided from 17th Street along the parking adjacent to the Hackett House at the east end via public access adjacent to the Amtrak station. So that's more or less the project in a nutshell. So the Hackett House will remain on site. There's going to be parking next to it, and I guess the questions moving forward is how to keep the Hackett House as part of the site and to incorporate it into the future operations of the site.
Okay. Have you guys acquired the property at the corner of 17th and Washington?
That's not
No.
not part of this. It's,
Okay.
I think Mel's Auto Repair is not part of this.
Okay. So that obstructs.
Which is this property right
Yeah. So there's actually less grass to the right of it than we're actually seeing here.
The illustration just shows the property up to the property line.
Oh, okay.
There's this site plan is based on a survey. So there's a side yard between the back of Mel's and the face of the Hackett House that you see here, which is currently lawn and landscape.
And the house isn't being moved, or it is being moved?
It is not.
It's not, okay, that was one of my questions. I wasn't sure whether.
It's not being.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. And it will remain on its same tax lot that it is now. The hotel is not encroaching into the tax lot of the Hackett House. So even though it's the same ownership, Hackett House Hospitality Group, the hotel sits on a separate tax lot and does not use any of the property that the Hackett House uses.
Okay. In the parking lot that you've shown, there's an existing parking lot there, so it's not as if that's a large change.
It's being expanded a little bit. Reconfigured.
We've designed it so that the curb that's closest to the Hackett House remains in the same location.
Okay.
And there's the features on the site that are, I think, the most significant are the landscaping. There's a large maple tree, 36,
and that's going to stay.
And that's going to stay. We've sort of shown the sidewalk, a new sidewalk along here curving around. I think the city's supportive of, not bulldozing the tree and so forth. And this is exactly where the existing edge of the parking is on the parking. We will do a redesign of the landscaping here as part of the project. But currently there are some evergreen trees that I think were planted when Mark and Dan renovated the house and had it listed, and they've grown to be pretty good size. If they're healthy, we'll keep them. If not, I think the idea is to put some good size evergreen trees.
Can we have you talk into the microphone so we can catch
The
that?
laser pointer up there.
Okay. If the arborist determines that those trees aren't healthy and might not survive for a long time, then they would be replaced with new healthy specimens. And the illustration here, is intended to show what the view is if you're driving in 17th Street or walking on the sidewalk on 17th Street. So that's.
I don't think yours is on. No. There.
Can you hear it now?
Please turn Mark's on as well.
I think it is on.
Is it glowing?
It's got a red light.
It's glowing.
Okay.
I think Mark. He's been around town for a long time, and
I know him
don't know
very well.
I don't know if you know the history of this, but when Mark and Dan were first in business, and they got booted out of the office in their house, this was the first building that they purchased and renovated and moved their offices into, and updated it and put it on the historic register. So
Was that before the Jagger house and stuff?
What's that?
Was that before doing the Jagger and the Miller house?
We did this in '84, and it was really close to the same time we did the Jagger Miller house for Claire. We did restoration for her.
So the bigger picture here, the property, the rest of the property that extends all the way down to the railroad depot is the property that will be redeveloped as part of this master plan. And we've been working on it with Mark and his partners here for a few years, and I think we've finally zeroed in on a scheme that seems like it really clicks and makes sense. We were looking at some alternatives that had a pretty big structured parking lot and 3 or 4 buildings, office buildings and so forth. And the current plan right now, I'll put the other site plan back up, has evolved into this plan, which has 2 new structures plus the Hackett House. And if you know the property there, some of this property, particularly as you get over closer to the railroad depot, it drops down lower. It's about elevation of 40. So in '96, when it flooded, the water was about 10 feet deep there. But the end of the property where the Hackett House is, the Hackett House, I think, was very close to flooding, but it didn't flood. Right. And there's a small island of land there that's out of the flood zone. And the Hilton Hotel Group really wants to do a Hampton Inn and Suites in Oregon City, and they have approved this site for the project. So this has been approved through Hilton. They have some requirements. One of the requirements is they want a porte cochere, which you can drive up to the front and drop people off, and the lobby, right up the lobby, and so that really needs to be up out of the flood zone. And as it turns out, unless you're going to spend lots and lots of money to build a big concrete structure that you can put buildings on, this is the only part of the site that we can do this on. And the economics of building that big structure, unless there's substantial public investment, urban renewal, and that sort of thing, it just doesn't work in this location now. So we've gravitated to the design that has the hotel at this end of the property. So the second criteria that Hilton has for this market, they want 100 rooms. And so we tried a number of different schemes, and I think the first couple of schemes that we came up with, had a building that was lower, 4 stories, and because of that, it took up more of the site, and the only way we were able to get that to work on this site would have required moving the Hackett House. And Dan and his and Mark have another site over here on Abernathy that's not too far away. We sort of floated that trial balloon up to see, gosh, what do you think if we pick the Hackett House up and move it over here? It's next to some other historic neighbors and so forth. Would that be the right thing to do? And the consensus that we got was it really wants to stay where it is. And so the other alternative, which is the one that we're pursuing, is to go ahead and condense the hotel down and add 1 more floor to the top of it. So we have a 5-story hotel now, but it's a smaller footprint, and we leave the Hackett House where it is. And so Mark and his partners have entered into an agreement, formed this company, Hackett Hospitality, and they own the Hackett House property now. And I think currently it's used as office space.
Yes.
But as the hotel comes online, I think it may evolve into some kind of a bistro restaurant or meeting spaces or something that works with the Abernathy Center sort of wedding business, of some sort. So it may evolve, but it'll continue to be, a historic property, and any alterations to the structure itself would come before the review board here. So what we're really, here to talk about is, what steps can we do to maintain, as appropriate a backdrop, if you will, for this, so that the new hotel next door, doesn't detract from the historic character of the house.
So, guys, I appreciate you sitting here so long. It's been a long meeting tonight. I'll cut right to the chase for you. I don't have any large concerns here. If you were to take down the large conifer near the bay window, you probably want to, because that's probably getting into the foundation by this time. I appreciate that you're keeping the large conifers on the back side of that property as a screening. The south facade of the building has some variation in it, so it's not quite just a large wall. It could be more of one. Really, where you're touching the site that the Hackett House is actually on is very, very light. And I appreciate that you said you're keeping the curb in the same place. If you would have moved it a few feet, I would not have balked at that, given that you're not moving the house, but you're doing it, and that's fantastic. And all things being equal, this hotel could have gone in without really much comment from this board, if it was, not under the same ownership, is my impression. So, I think you've been very sensitive to the existing house, and well done.
Is the house on the National Register, or just
National.
it is national?
It's on the National Register.
So,
yeah.
are you going to have to have SHPO?
We're not going to do anything to it. So I don't think it'll involve
doesn't,
SHPO.
okay.
Yeah, we're not changing the outside of it, outside of it
So
all,
what I mean is-
or the use.
We do have a landscape architect engaged to work with us on the land
help
use
screen and stuff
application
like that,
here,
yeah.
and so a question for you is: does revisions to the landscape on the property, does that come under your purview? Is that something that we would need to review with the Historic Review Board?
I think that could probably be taken care of at a staff level. It will need to be reviewed under the purview of the HRP guidelines, but I don't think it needs to come before the board.
I don't think so. I think
And it's not like right up against the house.
Unless they say it does. But
The application in general will come before the board. So you're just talking about changes to landscaping along the way in the future. Okay. Just to clarify, because your individually designated structure or your
Has to come
designation
here.
is for the entire property, and then also we'll want to get Historic Review Board's weigh in on a height variance for that hotel.
I would think that would be the biggest thing is the height variance, wouldn't it be?
Yeah, we struggled with that long and hard, and I think going to the 5 floors and the smaller footprint and keeping the Hackett House where it is just seemed like it made the most sense. But it does require. We'll be going through a master plan process, so I think the technical term will be a exception or a adjustment to the height criteria rather than a variance, but it amounts to the same thing.
I'm glad you did not wrap the hotel around the Hackett House, which
God.
would be another alternative.
Yeah.
You're going with the I format, but you could have gone with the L, wrapped it around, and that. I'm picturing both going down 17th, looking at it. As you get to that intersection, you see it as you're coming. Gosh, what is that? 17th. As you're coming up 17th.
That's 17th and
Right.
Abernathy
17th
on the other side.
Abernathy, yeah. As I'm coming down Abernathy, you get to that intersection and you really see the house
Yeah.
in a strong way. And if there was a huge hotel behind it, that would be really unfortunate.
Right.
But you'd be hitting the height.
Yeah.
So I see, given the options, this is the more sensitive solution. That's my opinion.
And 17th will remain closed, right? I mean,
It will remain closed.
It will?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, we're hoping that eventually, that there may be some City of Oregon City project that develops the property between 17th and Abernathy Creek with some sort of a pedestrian connection
like a
that could drop down to the creek, pass under the overpass, come back up to Main Street, and provide connectivity over to the Cove and future mass transit that may be on Main Street.
even like a footbridge or something.
Yeah,
Probably
something
more
like
like
that.
an underpass,
Underpass.
by the new railroad.
We're not
trestle
wanting
there.
to stick
them
our
off. Yeah.
stick our self in harm's way of dealing with the salmon bearing streams and all of the stuff that comes with that. But we think it would be a cool idea to have a foot connection there.
Okay. Do we have any thoughts on this side?
I like it.
Yeah, I don't have any problems either. I like everything, and I would echo that what board member Metzen said about that. It seems like you've already found probably the closest to the ideal solution.
All right. Well, we sure appreciate your
input.
your
Oregon
time
City's
and your
coming up in
input.
the world.
Yeah, it's kind of a we're transitioning to a different zone here, with a different look, and so it's a real art to try to transition between the downtown areas we know it now and that new zone. So away we go.
Wow.
Thank you very much, gentlemen.
All right.
Thank you.
Okay. And that was the last item on the agenda.
Yeah.
And with that,
Just communications.
Communications.
I was trying to skip that and you stopped me early.
I'll talk really fast.
All right.
Okay, so if the building division has hired a new plans inspector, plans reviewer / inspector. So we welcome him to the team. He started yesterday, and we have a couple of planning applications that are now before the Land Use Board of Appeals. So we had the Beaver Creek Road concept plan that was there, and then we also recently received a remand from LUBA, the Land Use Board of Appeals, regarding a comprehensive plan amendment and zone change at Beaver Creek in 213. That remand decision from the Land Use Board of Appeals was appealed to the Court of Appeals, so now we're at the Court of Appeals for both of those decisions. So I'll keep you updated on those as the details progress. The other thing is that, as you may have seen, there have been a few landslides around the city. The city is currently watching 5 landslides at the moment. Not all of them are proving to be harmful to property or persons. You may have noticed that they're near Trillium Park behind the hospital. The city has closed a section of roadway and determined one home to be dangerous. So we are having communication often and open with all of the residents in the area, and would like to, we're conservative and making sure that the city is safe, and so are our residents. So we will keep you updated with information as it comes along. If anyone has any questions about landslides, they're encouraged to contact John Lewis, our Public Works Director.
Excellent.
Thank you.
All right.
Also like to state that next month we have a new application coming through. There's a new home being proposed in Kenema on the corner of 4th and Ganong.
Okay. And so we'll have that and the 7 homes we looked at tonight.
Correct. Yeah.
Okay.
Well, we got rid of one, now we got another.
Thank you very much. And with that, we are adjourned.
That's a